Mufasa, the Lion King, has roared into theaters, but it's getting dominated by Sonic the Hedgehog 3 at the box office. Is this prequel worth your time, though? Well, stick around and I'll give you my take. Welcome to this review of Mufasa, the Lion King, and let us get right into it. Is this movie good? Well, it's okay. No movie is really necessary, but this film, I think, really struggles to properly justify its existence in many respects. Um, in story, it feels like a direct to video Disney sequel, for better and for worse. I already, for example, could not tell you what the names of any of like the new original to this movie characters are. I think the story itself is very predictable, like even characters in the framing device of the movie. Like the movie is a story being told to a younger lion cub by Rafiki and Timon and Pumbaa, and even the characters Timon and Pumbaa are like telling the audience, "Oh, I know who this character in the story is going to end up being in the original Lion King." Like the movie itself doesn't even treat it like a twist because it knows that anyone watching is going to think about it and figure it out right away. Um, I also think some of the prequel tropes are kind of tired here. Like, I don't really care how Rafiki got his walking stick, but if that's a burning question that you've had since watching the original Lion King, you'll get your answer here. Um, I feel like the movie might have played better for me too if it was an actual 2D or even 3D animated film rather than the live action photorealistic look that the initial Lion King remake from a few years ago, directed by John Favreau. Then that movie chose to utilize this photorealistic look that I think it looks good, but I think it would have been more interesting to just do an animated movie. The expressions on the faces of the animals in this prequel aren't quite as blank as those in the original live action Lion King. But I still feel like a straight up animated musical would have offered greater chances for like expressiveness of the characters and inventive, colorful choreography during the musical numbers. And speaking of the musical numbers, I think the songs here are mostly decent. I think Lin Manuel Miranda, his touch here works to the benefit of the film overall. Say what you will about him being corny or having, theater kid energy or whatever, but a Disney musical should absolutely have theater kid energy. So I think that it works here that he was involved. Um, Moana 2, because Lin Manuel Miranda worked on Moana 1, of course. Moana 2 really suffered in terms of quality songs, I think, for lack of Lin Manuel Miranda's involvement. And it's hard for me to say if he made the right move overall, picking between movies here. Moana 2 had fine musical sequences, but I saw that movie in a loud as hell Dolby theater, and I already kind of would struggle to hum any of the music if you really asked me to. Then again, Moana 2 is doing quite well at the box office, so I doubt that Disney is that sad about whether or not people enjoy the music there. They're just happy that, people paid money to go to the theater to see it. Um, I give the edge to Mufasa in terms of songs for sure, given that I'm already starting to see people on TikTok and Instagram making memes and using tracks from the movie to do dances and sketches and things like that, which is always a good sign that, the music in any given film is connecting with people. Um, I feel like the film's closest comparison to something else that came out earlier this year, and a movie that, in my opinion, is much better is Transformers One. That movie, I think, is underrated, and I could be biased because I'm a Transformers fan, but even though Transformers 1 lacks any musical sequences, it covers almost the exact same story beats. It's more colorful, though, and more funny. I think the humor works better there. It's also smarter in terms of how it handles interpersonal conflicts of the characters and also how it kind of tackles political ideology of the characters. As odd as that sounds for like an animated kids film, there are quite a few kind of political ideas inherent in the story of Transformers 1 and even in Mufasa, right? The idea of kings and who has right to what domain based on birthright or based on leadership skill. I think Transformers 1, just to make a comp to like another kind of kids movie earlier in the year, does a much better and much more thoughtful take on that kind of story throughout the course of its runtime. Um, as far as performances in Mufasa, they're solid across the board. I wouldn't say that there are any like revelatory turns. I already knew that Kelvin Harrison Jr. could sing. I like him as an actor, but I saw him in Cyrano a few years ago with Peter Dinklage. I love that movie, and I think he's great in it. Um, I really love that movie. Actually, if you haven't seen Cyrano and you're a musical head, excuse me, you should totally check it out. I liked hearing the voice of Aaron Pierre, someone who I've been hearing a lot about now between Rebel Ridge and the upcoming Lanterns television show, or Green Lanterns, whatever it's called. I can't say I'm super familiar with his filmography, but I think he's good here. Mads Mikkelsen is interesting, I guess, as the villain of the story. I feel like Mikkelsen has played villains in so many things that his role here in Mufasa will kind of vanish into his body of work almost immediately, because his great expressive face is not on screen; it's his voice only, which he has a great voice. But if you really think about it, Mikkelsen has played bad guys in Harry Potter, or I guess technically Fantastic Beasts, excuse me, Star Wars, Marvel, James Bond, Indiana Jones, and now The Lion King. And, I'm willing to bet that you probably forgot he was in at least one of those already. That's just kind of how prevalent he is as like a go to movie villain these days. Um, do you need to see Mufasa in a theater? I don't think so. This strikes me as the kind of film that will do great numbers on Disney Plus for a few generations of kids. But I would not say that it's a grand achievement in blockbuster filmmaking that must be seen on the biggest screen possible with like a packed crowd. Um, I don't mean to disparage anyone who worked on the movie. I know how many bodies it takes to, make a single minute of a movie like this. So I'm not talking crap about anyone involved, but I left the theater kind of just my first thought was I'm glad that, well, I'm glad that it wasn't bad because I spent 2 hours there, but I'm almost happier that like a few of these key creative voices are now free to do more risky things with their time. Like Barry Jenkins, the director, for example, I think is a filmmaker who has made some deeply personal and wonderful stories. I think it's a little bit of a bummer that Mufasa, for from bits and pieces of interviews he's done, that this movie has kind of sapped a little bit of his creative energy for a few years now. Um, Barry Jenkins is obviously a grown ass man who made a decision to do the movie, of course, but I hope that this Disney paycheck finances, 5 or 6 Moonlights in the coming years that, audiences can go and see. It's always just interesting to me when an indie darling gets plucked out of that realm to work on a big studio tentpole. It happens more often than you'd think. And, some people take to it a lot better than others. Some people kind of, assimilate, and that's kind of their bag from then on. And some people kind of bounce back and forth very effectively. I'm thinking of like a David Lowery or something. And some filmmakers, my guess, like Barry Jenkins, would, try it once and then realize it's really not for them. But, teach their own. What would I rate Mufasa the Lion King after all said and done? Well, my ratings are as follows, just to remind everybody. Movies are either A list, A amazing, A bridge, A abysmal, or they need to be A boarded. I reserve the right to change any of those monikers as time goes on. By the way, I know they're a little intense towards the bottom there, but some movies are really that bad. Not that abortion is bad. Continuing on, I hope you know what I mean by that. Mufasa the Lion King, it's a bridge. If I were really pressed to give it a numerical rating, it's a pretty unenthusiastic 3. There's nothing offensive about the quality of the movie, and it's a decent time out at the movies, but I struggle to imagine ever going back to it unless like my future kids, for example, are like, you know, unless they latch onto it in the way that some kids really latch onto specific movies in their childhood. Um, I saw this with AMC A List as part of a series where I'm attempting to see as many films as possible with A List in a single year. I saw this in an IMAX theater, and I saved a whopping 19.99. So while I wasn't over the moon necessarily about the quality of the film itself, um, I did like it just okay. I'm not saying it's horrible. While I wasn't thrilled with the quality of the film overall, I didn't think it was one of the best of the year. I can't say I'm unhappy with saving $20 to go see it in IMAX. Like that's a pretty good deal. Um, Anyways, thank you so much for watching and for bearing with me. Circumstances are a little bit strange. I'm recording here in a house full of other people over the course of the holidays. I'm going to try to continually try to improve the conditions of my setup here when I can. But I appreciate you joining me anyways. Stay safe. Have a great rest of your week and have a great new year. If you don't check in with me before then, trying to maybe post about Nosferatu. Maybe I saw that last night. I'm still kind of parsing together thoughts. I would love to see a complete unknown. I would love to see the Lord of the Rings War for the Rohirrim, just because I'm a Lord of the Rings nerd and it seems like kind of divisive. But you're here for Mufasa. Let's stay on topic there a little bit. Um, what'd you think of the movie? What'd you think of Mufasa? Let me know in the comments. Are you tired of these live action remakes? Are you in love with this one in particular, and are you bumping the soundtrack everywhere you go? I'm kind of curious because I think reception has been mixed a little bit on this particular movie. I'm kind of tired of the remakes, but I know for a fact that my ass is going to be in the theater to see the Lilo and Stitch one, like opening weekend. So who am I to talk? I'm not really sticking to my guns if it comes to certain stories, I guess. I just love Lilo and Stitch. That one I gotta see. I just gotta. I wish I had the cojones, the balls to stick to my guns and just abstain from these, but I just like going to see stuff. Anyway, thank you very much. And as I said, stay safe. Bye.